Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am really happy to be here and to see everybody today. And in all honesty, I'm here for me. You guys are all so brilliant. I can't wait to hear what you have to say today. So I know that we were talking about this, Brad and I, that we're here to help out. But isn't that the neat thing about events like this? Is we're here to give, but we're also here to get just as much. So I can't wait to hear what you guys say throughout the day today, as I get to know you a little bit more. All right. So my plan today is, rather than a keynote per se in a room like this, I'd love to facilitate a conversation about some of the things that are going on and see what I can do to help move the needle for you. Not that I have all the brilliant answers, but I've got some pretty good stories of things that I have messed up royally. And I'm hoping that gives you some idea of maybe how you can mess it up a little bit less as you move forward in your business. But I thought I'd just start a little bit with my story to give you some context. I appreciate the bio. That's awesome. Let me tell you the real story. So I was born in Wyoming, and I grew up in a small town in Iowa. My parents moved us to Iowa when I was 12 because my dad wanted to get an education. He was the first one in our family and his family to graduate from high school. He ended up getting a doctorate degree in philosophy, so I owe him so much for his ability to elevate our family line into an entirely different level. And in 1999, I decided I wanted to get out of Iowa. And so I actually went on the road traveling with a musical organization called Up With People. I don't know if anybody's heard Up With People a little bit. Yeah, in the back? Yeah, all right. So I'm like a minute away from jazz hands, right? And so are you looking for that moment where maybe it's not perfect, never will be. Maybe the leader has some things you don't and is missing others. Do they have enough that they can really pull it together and give you a good 70-80% chance at success? Probably you've got some diminishing returns kicking in now that you're staying in. So that was a great lesson for me. I'm so grateful to her that she was willing to be so direct with me and say, now's the time for you to go. I'm like, you're right, all right, I'm fine. Unfortunately, it doesn't always come that direct, right? It's a lot more nuanced. And so think about, as you're developing your people, are you watching for those signals and those signs? A couple of the signs that I've noticed now in hindsight of developing a lot more leaders is pacing. For me, if a leader's going to report directly to me, they have to pace at my speed, if not faster. And that is no easy task. I've got a lot of capacity and I'm very, very fast. But if a leader's going to report to me, they got to be on top of it. For a long time, I sort of justified my way. Now, fast doesn't necessarily always show up in the same way. Like my CPA is not fast like I am, but he is paced fast as a professional. Like, you know what I mean? So it's not always exactly the same, but it's similar. So that's one thing that I look for now is in time to delegate is, are they pacing fast? The other is, are they catching the nuances in human communication that are often unsaid, right? So, and you know this, having led a lot of people, it's either aligned or it's not. And if you're keeping the green monster at bay and the person is aligned, then there's something to be said for that. So yes, kudos to Kimberly Horn for giving me a really good lesson around letting go to let grow. All right, lesson number 5. Yeah. So I want you right now, you've written down a few challenges earlier this morning on your piece of paper that Wayne had, was facilitating. I want you to take one of those challenges and consider it in a different way. And probably, I don't know, a handful of years ago, I had a great coach who said that in every communication, you have the head, the hand, and the heart, right? The head is telling you, what needs to be done strategically, how does all this line up, looking at the long-term perspective. The hand is like, what do we need to do today? And the heart is really giving you an indication of where ultimately, in taking everything into consideration, known and unknown, where do we need to go? So take that one scenario that you have that's a real challenge for you right now, and I want you to just kind of look at it and read it to yourself silently for a second. And then I want you to take your hand and put it on your heart. So read it and then take your hand and put it on your heart for just a minute. And I want you to put your hand on your heart long enough that you can feel your heartbeat. Now, if you're not used to this, you may not be able to. It's interesting. Like sometimes I can access my heart, sometimes I can't. So if you can, you're lucky. If you can't, then just maybe take a couple deep breaths until you feel like you might be pacing at where your heartbeat is. Now, using your head, I want you to think about that question or circumstance that's a challenge to you right now. And your other hand, I want you to put your hand on the writing that you actually put down. Just put your hand on that statement or your iPad or whatever. So you're making a connection to the words. So all you're doing right now is you're triangulating the energy and intelligence and wisdom that is coming from the head, the hand, and the heart. And see if that's presenting a little bit more clarity, perhaps, to what that challenge is. All right. Did anybody get anything new from just that? And we did that for what, 45 seconds for time's sake. Did anybody get anything new to come to them from that challenge? Go ahead, sir.
A feeling of calm.
Yeah. Maybe that maybe everything's going to be okay. Yeah. Yeah, right.
Just had an aha moment because my wife is always saying, I keep telling her there's not enough time. And she's saying that's crazy. Everyone has the same amount of time. It's a matter of prioritization. And I think just really, because we're both running ourselves ragged right now.
Yes.
Conquering, dividing, and we have 2 young kids, so it's really about prioritization right now.
Okay, so prioritization came through. Yeah, that's great. I love that. This is a very simple technique that if you take a moment whenever you're challenged by something and create this a triangle effect almost, right, where you're triangulating the head, the heart, and the hand. And generally what happens for us is our head is pretty well already activated. Right? Generally doesn't need a lot of extra oomph. And for many of us who are doers, any doers in the room, like you just get things done. You like to-do lists, you're gonna get through them, you don't care how long, right? Your hand is also probably very, very active. The heart is often suppressed in those moments or is trying to like squeal at you at some inopportune times. This helps sort of calibrate that a little bit better and bring in some of the wisdom that is there for you if we just take a moment to listen to it and realize everything's going to be okay. So I wanted to leave that with you as a tactical exercise that I got from someone, which is, listening really is your greatest asset. Can you cultivate the listening to what is unsaid? And I'm not talking about other people. I'm talking about what is being said to you. What do you actually know that maybe isn't as present to you, that with a very, very short exercise, you can get a little bit more. So speaking of listening, I got an email from one of the top agents in my team one afternoon, and he said, "Hey, I'd like to take you to lunch." I need to stop having meetings with me. No, I'm not gonna have lunch. So I was like, okay, all right, sure, right? Because I realized I needed to connect with him because this was in the heart of growing multiple offices. I didn't even know how many offices we had. Like, is that one launched yet or not? It was that moment, right? And I had sort of neglected the team a bit. So we sat down to a lovely Thai restaurant in Washington, D.C. And I ordered the tom yum soup. And I'm kind of slurping my soup, and he's asking me questions, right, about how things are going. And I'm trying to be patient and get through this small chat, but I want to know why you're here, right? So he says, all right, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit and let you know that I'm leaving the team. I'm like, all right. And then I kind of was expecting this is what this was about. I was hurt because I sold him his very first house, sold him a series of investment properties, really built his net worth, got him into the real estate business, helped him go from zero production to a lot more than that over a long time. So I was like, kind of hurts, feels a little disloyal, especially right now because I got a lot going on, right? This wasn't the internal dialogue, right? And he goes, yeah, I'm leaving. Oh, and I'm taking the rest of the team with me. So at that moment, right? I had 9 people on that sales team in addition to the brokerage. And they all walked out the door. And it really sucked. Big time. And it brought up a lot of feelings around loyalty. Right? It's like, y'all aren't loyal. Like, after all I've done for you, right? This was the dialogue that was playing in my head, some of which might have squeaked out from time to time. After all that I've done for you, how could you do that to me? And it stuck with me for a while. Like, I'm not saying that I was able to like learn any lessons from that for a good while, because it really hurt. It felt personal, a lot more personal than all the other stuff that was going on in the brokerage. One afternoon, though, I had a conversation with my coach, and I think he'd been telling me this for a while, but it wasn't sinking in. But he said something in that moment that finally hit. He said, I want you to take this idea of loyalty and talk about alignment. And can you move loyalty to alignment? And as you go forward and you lead more teams in the future, and you will, at the moment I doubted myself, right? I'm like, I'm never gonna have a team again. Screw them all, right? He's like, no, you know, things will progress. You will get over this. You've got a lot. All will be well. Going forward, though, think about alignment versus loyalty. The truth is people don't owe you any loyalty. Like, these are not your spouses or your kids. Yep. Often they don't even legally owe you anything. They're 1099 contractors. Like, there is really no loyalty there per se. You might develop personal relationships that makes you feel like there's loyalty, and there may be loyalty there personally. But I really like turning loyalty into alignment and just asking myself constant questions with all my key people right now, which is, are we aligned? That's a much better conversation over lunch too, by the way. Like, are you loyal to me is weird, right? Actually, right? People are like, no, sort of triggers that thing in all of us. But hey, can we talk about alignment? Are we still aligned here? Right? Are we still, like, where are we going? Is this good for you? It's good for me? Like, how is it? Much better conversation to facilitate. So after that moment, I'm happy to say I didn't have any other massive walkouts like that. And I believe that a lot of it has to do with, as a leader, I began to facilitate frequent and consistent, constant communication about loyalty, alignment, right? Alignment. So what does that look like? It looks like about once a month in all my key relationships, we talk about alignment and saying, where are we headed? What have we accomplished in the last 6 months? Where are we going in the next 6 months? How are you feeling about that? Really important. Do you see any benefits for yourself and your family personally from achieving that? Are you motivated by the mission that we're on here? Is there anything that's given you some question or doubt? How am I doing in supporting your journey? Do you have any reflections on what I could do better? Right? These are all loyalty conversations, and these are happening once a month with regularity.
So just curious, what did you say, like, what was the reason, or, like, you know?
What was the reason?
Yeah.
I had completely abandoned the team. That's the true reason. And he told me that. He's like, you've abandoned us. And I was like, I'm not your dad. Like, to me, that didn't sound like good feedback. But it was true. And the essence of what he was saying and the other team members were saying was, the leader is absent from the ship, and nobody's been anointed the new leader. So we're all out here just like doing our thing and going nowhere, and so we're going somewhere where there's a leader. That's really what he was saying. But that's what happened. And it's true, because I was busy launching all these other offices, right? And creating messes over there too. But but for the team, for sure, the hard to admit and a bit embarrassing thought pattern was, I'm kind of done with the team. Like, I'm on to my next thing. And well, of course that translated out to them. They felt it.
Yep.
You know? And that's been something I've had to be really mindful of, even as I grow today, because I do tend to go all in on something in like 5 years period of time, where I push hard and I get that to a certain place, and then I am kind of done with it, admittedly. The learning in that has been, okay, I have to install a leadership team into that business before I get kind of done with it. because I don't like slowly lose interest over time. It's more like a cliff for me. Like I'm like, I love it, it's amazing, this is awesome, like goodbye. And right? And so now I know that's a cliff. And so in the escalation of that business unit, I'm working hard to set up the leaders, create the entity structures and buy-in partnerships that allow me to sell it potentially if I don't think it's the kind of business that I can retain and be involved in as an investor and not as a leader. So really, really important. Thank you for asking that.
Question. What do you,
Yes, sir.
What do you offer for buy-in for agents?
That's a whole bag of chips.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer them. So hold that question. I'm gonna get done in time that we can do a little bit of Q&A. Okay? That's an excellent question. I want to answer you specifically.
Outside of the KW.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
Did you have those questions written down, or you spitballing those, your alignment questions?
Pardon me?
You were spitballing those alignment questions, you could say those again, could you?
I was spitballing, but I can say them again because I have them every month. So I always start with, so where have we been the last 6 months? And kind of grounded in some gratitude, right? This is good for me as much as it is good for anybody else, right? Sometimes it's interesting. I can miss some gratitude for what's once been because I'm so excited about what's coming, right? So I find I got to ground it in some gratitude. Where would you say that we're headed in the next 6 months? I'm testing for some alignment to see if that's where I think we're headed, and then I'll triangulate anything that's off from how they articulate where we're headed. How do you see that benefiting you and your family? Really, really important. Because if they're not able to articulate very clearly where we're headed in the next 6 months is going to be a benefit to them, they may stay with you for a little while because they like you and your personality, but that doesn't have legs. They have to see, we're all selfish, let's admit it, right? We have to see how it's beneficial to us in order to stay aligned. How can I support you better? What can I do to support you in your growth? And I push that question because sometimes it's like, oh, nothing. I'm like, can you give it a second to think about it? Because I'd like to know how I can support you better. Sometimes I have to play with the context of time. If they can't see how I can support them in 6 months, maybe I'll ask them, what can I do to support you in the next year? Or what can I do to support you this month on what needs to be done? Maybe they're more project-based or oriented, and they need to see that in that increment of time. Does that help?
Just from a practical perspective, I'm right now, it's very timely for me. So I'm starting to think about, business planning for next year. And sitting down with my agents to do business planning for next year. And I literally, it's funny that you're going through this because on the flight here, I was writing out questions to send to them prior to our meeting to get them to think along these lines.
Great.
So I'm curious, are these things that you're sending to them ahead of time, or are these literally like on the spot conversations to get them to kind of be impulsive about it? How does that look for you?
Both. It depends on the person. Some people I know do better with preparation and time to think about the questions. Other people are just not going to read the email, right? So I may as well not send it. So it's much more like one-on-one. And depending, the personality type, real detail-oriented people, if you spring questions like that on them without some thought, then you're never going to get anything either. So that's how I think about that. This is separate from, I would say, formalized business planning and goal-setting meetings. A great coach at one point said, management is about informal and formal structures. And I liked informal structures too, because I need some structure to manage people. Like, I'm not the guy that just naturally remembers it's your birthday. And I'm definitely not the guy who, even if I did, would say much about it. I'd be like, good job, But I know that doesn't work well for most people, so I've built in structures to informally check in. What does that look like? On my calendar, on my key people, at the top of my calendar, I have their name, and it's a prompt every other week to make sure I do the old, hey, how you doing today call. No agenda, no to-do list, how are you doing? And I do have everybody's birthdays that report to me in my calendar. Now, and we have a formal meeting as well. So that formal-informal combination is what tends to keep people much more aligned. My measurement always is, and I tell this when I hire people, no surprises, no surprises. I'm under no impression that you're going to be with me for the rest of your life. Well, no, that'd be nice. right? You're here for a year, or 2 or 3, maybe. I'd like you to be here at least for a year. But I recognize you're gonna grow, I'm gonna grow, and today's alignment is not tomorrow's. My only ask is that we continue the conversation so that I never surprise you and you never surprise me. All right, so lesson number 7, we'll go backwards here, there we go. Lesson number 7 is recruit away your problems. Now, sometimes we'll say blanket statements like recruiting solves all problems. I don't buy into that, actually, because that's not really true. However, recruiting does solve a lot of problems, and I can go back and point to those moments where the business was really, really sticky, where a key person came in and the whole thing blew up in a really, really good way, almost every single time. I'll give you an example. Recently, I launched the holding company, right? I was like, wow, we got a lot going on. We've got a variety of businesses and courses and investments and so forth that I need to launch. And I knew I needed to hire a really, really key person in order to organize that, because I had taken it 70% there. I'm a good 70%er. Like, I can take the idea 70, 80% there, articulate the vision, but I need somebody who's gonna bring it the rest of the 20 or 30%. So I spent a year looking for the right person, and I ended up recruiting a guy. His name is Shane Feldman. He's awesome. And he's my chief of staff. And I'll tell you, it has solved so many problems for me. Not only has it been an operational huge lift, but it's been that sort of, that person that I can vulnerably talk to and say, you know, I'm worried about this, or what am I gonna do with that? So consider in all the challenges you've got going on right now, it's not what you need to do, it's who you need to hire. And have you clarified the who in the equation? Do you have a job description for that? Like, I'll tell you that what Shane is actually doing today is very different from the original job description I crafted for him, not knowing who he was at the time, right? But I had enough of an idea what I needed to get done. I wrote it all up and I put it out there, and I started talking to people, and eventually I hired somebody. So consider who as you work to solve your challenges. And speaking of hiring too, one of the challenges that we have is in delegation. And I want to give you a very simple tip on delegation that has saved me so much time and energy. I remember there was a moment where I was still doing all of the listings work and the buyer work and launching the brokerage, and I just had so much going on. And I had a coach who called me and he goes, how's it going? And I'm like, ah! You know, just like spilled it all out at that moment. He goes, what's going on with delegation? I was like, I don't know, but I'll tell you, nobody can do it as good as I can. And so I can't find anybody who I can delegate to, because it comes back to me like really half-ass. I can't stand it. And he goes, all right, let's change your mindset on that. And I'm like, all right, right, as a good coach does. He goes, I want you to imagine 80%. If you can delegate it out at 80% of what you think you could do, chances are it's worth delegating for 2 really important reasons. One is you're not as good at it as you think. So just a little marker in the sand. You're not as good at those things, especially the operation and administration details. You're not as good at that stuff as you think. So actually somebody else is going to do a lot better. And your measurement of really good is often about how you do something, not what needs to be done. And the how is very, very flexible. You get a good key person in there, how they execute it, it's going to be entirely different than what you do or how you do it. So lower your bar to 80%, and I hate lowering my bar of any kind to 80%, but I was like, okay, let me do that, and it freed me up. So now I'm a lot more okay with mistakes, because sometimes they're not really mistakes, and they are the learning that my key people need. So, you know, before, if there was even a typo, you're fired, right? No wonder I didn't have any employees for a while. Right? But now I give people a lot more leeway, and 80% seems to be really a nice sweet spot on delegation. All right, let's talk a little bit about energy. I've got just one more after that, and then we'll take some Q&A. So this was, you know, after we had launched 3 or 4 offices, we had affiliates, I had my sales team, it imploded, like so much was going on. I came into the office one day and all of a sudden, like I was doubled over in pain. Major stomach issue of some sort. I'm like, all right, I'm out, I'm going home, which never happens, right? I hardly ever take a sick day. So the team was like, wow, what's going on? So I'm like, I'll be fine, I'll see you tomorrow. Next day, clears up, I come in the office, About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, again, like doubled over in pain. So now I'm like, what did I eat yesterday and today? Is this like, what's going on? Couldn't figure it out. I went home. Next morning, I was fine. I was like, huh. 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, again, like so much pain that I had to cancel appointment. You know, like how often you cancel your appointments? Hardly ever, right? So it's got to be serious. So this went on. I went to doctors, specialists, had every little test you can imagine. Every day, about the same time, I was just doubled over in pain. I tried all kinds of diets, you know, the bread and water, like everything. Couldn't figure it out. So in desperation, I had a friend who's like, well, why don't you go to an acupuncturist and see if the acupuncturist can help you? And I was like, it sounds woo-woo to me, but let me try it out. So I went to the acupuncturist, and she did her little thing, and she goes, you know, I think you're kind of stressed. I'm like, you think? Right. She goes, oh, your body is really manifesting a lot of what's going on in your business right now. Is a lot going on in your business right now? I'm like, oh yeah, and I gave her a little briefing. She goes, well, I'm pretty sure I can move this, but you've got to be much more attentive to your personal energy, or you're not going to make it as far as you think you can. And I was like, wow, that's a serious statement. But by then I was open to the feedback, because it had been so many weeks of having this daily stomach issue. Sure enough, after about 3 treatments, it was gone. Never to return again. And that was a huge lesson for me, which was what's happening in my mind eventually does manifest in my body. And by the time that happens, I've done some damage that has to be reversed, and that's going to take some extra investment in the energy area. So I ask you to look at what is your personal energy routine looking like. Are you putting your oxygen mask on first? Right? We are givers in this business. We give everything to our clients, to our agents, we leave it all on the table for them, don't we? Yeah. And then what do we have left for ourselves, let alone our families, poor things, right? So what does your personal energy routine look like? And I'm not talking about like, oh, you need to, go on more vacations. Maybe you do. But what is your personal energy routine? So I'll give you a sense of how I think about that for myself. I think of it in daily increments, quarterly increments, and annual increments. Am I getting deep breaths daily, quarterly, and annually? On a daily basis, it's about sleep and nutrition, right? And exercise. Sleep, nutrition, and exercise. Like, is that working for me? 7.5 hours of sleep, good nutrition, working out 4 days a week. That's the cadence. It's not because I like it, it's like a necessity, right? On a monthly basis, I get acupuncture, I've kept it up, and massage. I have like spa day. Everybody knows, don't bother me during my spa day. I'm going in, I'm getting acupuncture, massage, and having a nice lunch to myself. Writing in my journal. It's awesome. It really recharges my batteries. I don't have to go anywhere. I do it all in DC. It's just all in, it's 5 hours, right? Once a month. But it makes so much difference. And then on about every 3 or 4 months basis, my husband and I go on a beautiful, wonderful international trip. We go 7 to 14 days out of the country. He's an entrepreneur as well, so by then we really need it, right? And that has both been my personal energy routine and our energy routine together as a couple. So now, what does yours look like? What would you like it to look like? Right, that's just an example of mine. Everybody has their own thing, or maybe you go to the lake house, or you probably have a sense of what you need to do, and I would love for you to even write it down right now. If you could add one thing to your personal energy routine, what would that be? And how as a group do we support ourselves and each of us to put our oxygen masks on first? We talk about that, but are we actually executing on that? Right? And we know there's consequences if we don't. How many people in this room are not 20 anymore? Right? Exactly. More and more consequences show up as we get older. So I just wanted to be that reminder for you today about your personal energy routine. All right, I have one more. So I got in the business. I told you I sold 12 million my very first year, and 20 the next, 25, so like good years starting in. By year 3, I was like, do I need to file my taxes? Right, I wasn't a trained businessman, so I sent all my stuff to the CPA, and he was like, oh, all right, this can take a while, and it starts to sort through it. I get a call, and he's like, hey, going through your records, and I don't see your quarterlies. And I'm like, my what's? Your quarterlies. I don't see any quarterly tax payments. And I was like, oh. Funny. So I realized really quickly that the taxes weren't being taken out of my paycheck. And I owed like a couple $100,000 to the IRS. So that was a wake-up call, a tough one. So, I dug myself out of that hole. And a few years later, I got a notice from the IRS of a multi-year multiple entity audit. Anybody have one of those letters? Yes. They're a joy.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yes. So I'll never forget the moment where, after some back and forth with my tax attorney, the auditor came to my home office. And I am sitting there at my desk, but not behind my desk. I'm in front of my desk. She is sitting at my desk, at my computer, going through my financial records. She had appropriately judgmental small glasses at the end of her nose. And she's typing, looking at me, and she says, I want to talk about travel. And I'm like, oh man, this was my Achilles heel. I told you I love to travel. I also love to deduct the travel. So she's like, I want to understand, what was the revenue that was generated from, where was it? Cancun? I'm like, we're looking to build a referral network. She's like, uh-huh. Type. And it's on my computer, right? I'm like, what is happening over there? I'm completely freaked out at this point. My home office in my basement, I'm on the other side of the power dynamic was really messed up. So she continues this, right? What is it? Oh, Paris, she says, in sort of this snide, non-French accent. Well, needless to say, that didn't go well for me. And I ended up getting a pretty big correction notice that I owed a lot more taxes than I thought. And it taught me a really important lesson, which is we need to focus on profit. And this was 10 years into the business. And I was really upset that here I am 10 years in and in the hole again by a couple $100,000. How could this be? Incredible top line revenue, multiple ventures going on, and I'm in the hole again by a couple $100,000. Who does that? And I was really upset with myself. And I made a commitment, though. I said, all right, you got to get your stuff together here at this point, because this doesn't end well. And I had a great conversation with the coach, and he said, look, the scale and scope of your ambition, as you articulated to me, financially, you've got big goals, Brandon Green, does not match your skill set or how you're showing up with regards to money. You often delegate it out. You're I got someone for that. Or I'm sure they're doing fine, or how's that working for you? And I'm like, well, not so great. So I learned an incredibly important lesson, which is it's not about gross revenue.
Amen.
It's about building wealth. And the last 10 years have been entirely different for me. So I bolstered my skill set. And I thought, you know what, I'm smart. If I can figure out how to sell real estate and launch brokerages, I can figure out a P&L. As a matter of fact, I probably need to. I can run a balance sheet and understand what that looks like. I can form a budget. And I can hire a better bookkeeper. And I can oversee them. And I can understand the 500-page tax return. And guide the CPA and learn from the CPA. And I can hire a CPA who actually will teach me something rather than just send me a document that I don't understand. So it was both a big mindset change, but it was also a very big tactical change. And I started to measure success, not by top line revenue anymore, but by how much I was accumulating on my balance sheet. How much was my net worth statement, which was an entirely different document, growing? How many pieces of real estate was I acquiring? What was the valuation of this sales practice that I was putting my heart and soul into? If I sold the brokerage tomorrow, what can I get for it? What's the multiple on that? Who's the buyer? Right? I started to ask those questions. When do I want to sell it? How could I sell it? What's the time? All that began to form my thinking on it, and I want to leave this as number 10 for you, which is wherever you are, financially is where you are, and it's okay. We've got to accept that. You know, Twitter's a funny thing. It always makes you think that everybody else is richer than you are. Right? But the reality is we're all doing really, really well, and we can do so much better. And so my number 10 lesson is focus on wealth building and profitability. And it is actually a lot of what informed me launching my my holding company, Chapter 2 Ventures. Chapter 2 Ventures, for me, has been my demonstration of, okay, great, I've got all these real estate investments, I'm building out a boutique hotel in Maryland, which is gonna be incredible. I want you all to stay there when we get it done in 3 years, called StonyCreekFarm.com. Write down that URL, follow us, it's awesome. It's a boutique agritourism resort, multi-year project, awesome. I could talk a whole hour on that. And then we're building out a lot of financial education products as well, as Wayne alluded to, that will really, really help. So I have one ask for you as we go on here. I created we have a 30 under 30 event tomorrow, but I wanted to do something great and special for you guys today, for you or anybody in your organization. I do have a course I developed that is about my journey around building wealth and how I went from in IRS debt multiple times to building now what I would say is a really exciting and robust financial life. It's called the Alchemy of Money for real estate agents, and we have one called the Alchemy of Money for entrepreneurs coming a little bit later as well. I've been doing a lot of financial coaching for a long time, although I decided to take everything I've got and put it into this course, all the documents, everything that I've got. And I've given you guys $1,000 off if you know of anybody who wants it, just as a thank you for you. It's not that much tomorrow. It's gonna be a different offer tomorrow. So if I can help you with your finances and move the needle for you, I'd love to do that. By the way, it's not just an online course. I think online courses are great, but I wanted to combine other elements to it. It also includes monthly touch-ins and personal, like I'm not looking to get 1,000 people in there. I'm looking to move the needle significantly for just a handful of people financially. And the people that get through that whole program will become accredited investors and will get access to our investment fund. So we've opened a real estate investment fund. We're also doing some more in hospitality and a couple things in tech. And one of the challenges people have often at building their own wealth is they don't have access to the good stuff. I've built a lot of access over the last 10 years, so that group gets access to those investments. So it's not just about education, it's about training, it's about community, and it's about actually investing together and moving our net worth. So,
Are you running it under a 506C?
pardon me?
Are you running it under a 506C?
This entity? No, I'm not. The course?
Yeah.
No, the course is not, it's for profit. Yeah.
The investment that you're having people joining.
No, the investments are not a 501c3. Yeah, it's a for-profit entity.
Oh, no, 506C is private.
Oh, 6C?
Yeah.
No. And it's actually, the investment structure is relatively simple. We have a holding company that generally takes the primary share of the investment. Each individual investment is done on its own. We create a separate LLC. Depending on who wants to participate in it, the holding company capitalizes it, investors capitalize it, and most things we end up getting a bank loan to. We're not big enough yet for what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, you never know.
All right, great. So I know I'm just a little over my time here, though if we have room, I'll take a couple questions because I want to answer your question about contributing or agents, how we incentivized agents from a partnership standpoint.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Always looking to have agents or have them buy in. And I'm not greedy, right? So I would love to give ownership opportunity, whether that be through shares, whether that be through actual physical entity, or whether that be through responsibility or leadership. You know,
Yep.
How do I attract them to? What we find is that it's far in between the agents that rather just go out there and sell, make money, go home and be done, than actually be
Yes.
part of something bigger and have that vision.
So I've done a lot of things here, most of which have failed, but a few things have succeeded in this. When it comes to agents or employees or people that you want to partner into the organization, I found that it needs to be coupled, in my mind, with education, because you can grant someone equity or have them buy equity into your organization, but if they don't understand what they have or you've given them or they're buying into, then the benefit is lost for the most part. So we did a lot of stuff where we gave people juicy deals financially, and they had no idea how good it was, and it fell flat. I was like, well, what's the point, right? We're giving them money and they don't even appreciate it. So that's a big thing. Second is, we discovered over time that most brokerage activities and sales activities are not great for agent partnerships for the sole reason that you need to put in a lot of time into it. I don't need your money in a brokerage, I need your time more than anything. And so these are not like passive investor entities. And most agents truly, or employees, would rather be more what looks like as a passive investor in your business and not an active investor, because you want them to show up to stuff, and after a couple of years they're like, I thought I was an investor, I just want my check, right? Especially if they leave you, then you have this whole reorg you gotta do entity-wise, it's a mess. So what we decided to do is, okay, let's bring people in as equity participants into commercial real estate investment deals. And have that be the thing, because we have access to commercial real estate investment deals most people do not have. So if we've got an agent or an employee in the organization, then it's a great benefit for them to come in and buy in, let's call it 1% of a really exciting commercial investment opportunity. And that way, if they do leave, it's okay. The commercial building is not counting on their participation. And maybe they're gonna learn something along the way, and maybe they're gonna value that a lot over time, or maybe they're not. But I'm not gonna be harmed by them leaving and having to reconfigure the entity. And we always tell them too, my final point, then I can have a side conversation with you, is this is not it's not like an ATM. Like if you're gonna put $30,000 in and buy 0.5% in a multi-million-dollar building, I can't get you your $30,000 back 6 months from now when you're in a cash crunch. It doesn't work that way. So we've had a lot of ups and downs and challenges around that, and that's why we coupled it with the education side.
That's what I was about to ask. I was going to say, are you actually giving them their
No.
equity?
We're not.
No, I wouldn't either.
No, we're not. And which has created tough conversations, which like, I'm not gonna go through the effort of refinancing the building and restructuring the investment. No, you'll get your 30,000 along with everybody else as soon as we sell.
Exactly. Okay.
All right, let me ask you a couple quick questions.
Yes.
Can I lightning round for a
Yeah,
second?
go.
Okay, first off, how awesome is Brandon? You've helped me avoid a bunch of mistakes and get my stuff together, so thank you for that. All right, just a couple quick questions I want to ask because I thought it'd be good for everybody else. Where do you find talent? What's been your best one or two places to find great people?
The whole like placing ads, none of that has really worked for me. It has been about training my database over time to produce talent for me. So when I'm looking for something, I put a job description out in a mass email to everybody and start making calls.
When do you fire?
When do I fire? That's a hard question to ask quickly, or to answer quickly. What would I say about firing? When I know it's not a fit, which is usually very, very quickly, I have a whole story on that, and then I begin to literally say to someone, I don't think this is a great fit.
Yeah.
What do you think? And I get their feedback, and at some point I say, I think you need to be finding a new opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm very direct about that. Before I fire them, like I think you need to go find a new opportunity. And I let that sit in for them. And 9 times out of 10, they do go find a new opportunity and I don't have to fire them.
Yeah.
And I just squeeze that until it comes to the point where I have to fire. But that usually does the heavy lifting for me. They resign. And that's what I'm going for, rather than firing.
What's been the best revenue or the best way you found agents? What's been the best agent attraction?
The best agent attraction have been doing great educational events, online and in person. And having the long game view of that relationship and not the short-term transactional recruiting view.
And why do you think they stay?
They stay because they see what's in it for them. And the minute they don't see what's in it for them anymore, they leave. And so we've worked very, very hard to continue to engender that atmosphere. Great culture, great offerings, some services, where a lot of people are now providing services.
Yeah.
They can see what that value looks like.
What for you? What's been the most profitable add-on venture or whatever it is for your brokerage?
Title.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And what is one or two things we need to watch out for next in real estate world?
Yeah, I think we have some major changes potentially coming around the entire configuration of the broker role, right? With all these lawsuits going on challenging the very nature of the broker relationship, I think it's critical that we diversify I don't know where the broker business is going to be in 10 years, to be honest. Nobody does, right? But given the number of challenges that are pressing in on the model itself, I think we all have to be incredibly well diversified. If you think about it, the whole brokerage entity setup is only there because it's required by the state jurisdiction.
Right.
That's the only, if that were to go away for some reason, then why, like, all of a sudden, what guarantees people need us as a broker legally disappears. And there's enough challenges right now to that make that a little scary. And the whole 1099 W-2 configuration could also be a complete game changer. So diversification, diversification, diversification. We will figure it out if we have some other things going on at the same time.
Yes, awesome. All right, I saw one or two hands. Let's do it real quickly.
Oh, no,
Both of you, and then we'll wrap.
Yeah, I was wanted to say one, thank you for this. It was very informative. I learned a lot. I operate in the commercial real estate space, and I know you had touched on one of the revenue things was real estate development.
Yes.
And I know you had mentioned hotel. Was that the only kind of asset you've kind of done, or you've done different?
Actually, hotels, this is the first hotel hospitality business I've done. Everything else has been predominantly mixed-use commercial in Washington, D.C. in emerging neighborhoods. So a lot of public-private partnership deals.
Gotcha.
And residential on top, commercial on the bottom, sort of thing. So this is my first rural development project and first hospitality project. It's really a challenge.
Understood.
A
I
lot of fun.
understand. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, is there one more?
On your commercial deals that you have going on, raising capital and finding partners,
Yeah.
is that just through your connections, or do you have specific? 'Cause
Yes. So far, all of our capital raise has come from the key people in our network.
That's what I thought.
We haven't had to do a broad capital raise strategy. This hotel project I'm doing though is the biggest one I've ever done, right? This is probably a $20 million project.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to do something different from a capital raise standpoint. I'm focused right now on zoning. So I gotta get through zoning, and then I'm gonna look at capital raise strategies for a project like that early next year, or mid next year probably.
And for a lot of your capital's right here in this room if you do it right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tiffany, last one.
I just wanted to know the website for the hotel again.
StonyCreekFarm.com, STONEY creekfarm.com, and my website is just brandongreen.com. And that'll give you a little bit more information on broadly what we're doing.
All right, give this guy a huge round.